What do you look for when you're applying for a job? What are some of the signs or some of the indicators? How can you prepare? What can help you to best land that job? Imagine if you had intel from that organization, or better yet, what many of these organizational leaders who are recruiting salespeople are looking for. Well, I got that intel for you today. You're going to love it. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. On this episode, we have a fantastic guest. His name is Mr. Dan Fantasia. He and I connected, probably 7-8 years ago on a podcast. And he's been on our show a couple of times. And the reason why I like bringing Dan on, because he runs an agency. It's a recruiting agency, but not just any recruiting agency. One of the nation's top sales, specifically recruiting agency. And they do a pretty darn good job of at this. And one of the things that I like is he has experience working with people like you and me, especially when it comes towards what employers are looking for. So in the conversation today, I wanted to just get back into chatting with Dan, but also get some insights. What's new? What's different? And on today's episode, he shares 5 things that we should be looking for as sales professionals that can help us to be able to land our next gig successfully. Check it out. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Donald. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, I was just bragging about you there in a teaser and about our experience connecting over the years and some of the great episodes that we've done. And I linked back to those in the show notes. And, I told them a little bit about you, maybe I fabricated some more information about how you, climb Mount Everest 7 times and things like that. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do, man?
Yeah, so company's name is Treeline Incorporated, headquartered out of Boston, Massachusetts. We are a sales exclusive recruiting firm. So we help companies hire top sales talent matched to their exact needs so they can continue to grow revenue, build a company, and compete to win in basically any market conditions.
Love it. Well, it's definitely, you mentioned the last part, any market conditions. And today, what I would like to do, since you've done this, how many reps do you think you guys have placed over the years?
We have helped over 3,500 people change their lives. So
and
by the way, you know what's crazy, Donald? That's people that we've helped, our clients hire. But the amount of people over the past 23 years that we've given advice to that haven't necessarily taken an opportunity with one of our clients, but we've helped them with another company, it's probably quadruple that.
So you imagine, like you say, maybe quadruple times. You're probably looking at what, like let's just round it up to like 20,000 to be let's say 20,000. Now you think about that. There are a lot of people that has gone through that has learned from you, has done the things that you guys have shared. Here's what I want to get back to for the conversation today. You've seen a lot. You've experienced a lot. And I want to go from the seller perspective. If I'm a sales rep in this market, in this condition, based on all those people that you've helped, you've probably seen some trends or some common things that sellers don't do, or the ones who land great gigs do well. And that's what I want to tap into today to help my listeners. Like, what can they learn? And I'm sure the leaders who are listening to this can also, help look at these things as they're hiring. But what are the 5 probably the most important things for sellers to do to land a dream job these days?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's
maybe we could rattle 5 of them off, and then we can just dive into each of them, come back and dive into each of them, take a few minutes. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's great.
So what would you say those 5 things are?
Yeah, I'd say, and you know what? It's gonna seem simple, but it's not. It's much more complicated. But there's 5 things. The first thing I would say is, 1, you have to research the company. Do not take that for granted, right? Number 2, you have to make sure you understand why you're a good fit for the company and the role. 3, you have to be present. When I say present, you have to be on time. You can't be ghosting people. You can't make small mistakes. It seems so basic, but you have to be present, right? Okay. It's so critical. Number 4, know your story. And I think that's one place we really shine. We help people identify and we help them tell their story, because there are many things in a person's background they take for granted that are really excellent and very strong aspects of their background. And then lastly, you have to close. You have to close after every interview, and you need to close and ask for the job.
All right. Well, I want to hear that, because again, these sound like they're pretty obvious, but when you've helped so many people, you probably have seen that it's usually those obvious ones that people don't do. So let's go with the first one, research. Why is that so important? Why do employers feel that part is so important? And maybe how do you help people? What should I research? Like, there's so many things I could look up about the company. Can you guide me on that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, think of it this way. It's a basic, simple exercise. When you're in sales, you and I both know this. A lot of the top representatives are the ones that put the time in. They do the research. They research and understand who the prospect is, right? They gather information. If you can't gather information about the company that you're interviewing at, if you don't understand what they do and why you think you want to be there, then when you show up to do your first interview and you can't talk about why the company's a great fit, logically, the hiring manager thinks, well, this person doesn't care that much. It can't be that important to them. They haven't done any research. And by the way, if they haven't done any research before my interview, how much research will they do before they talk to one of my prospects? And so right there, Donald, it's a turnoff almost immediately.
So, and you're the second person to mention something on this nature today. I was talking to someone earlier, and they shared the idea of, if you're a sales professional and you're, the way you sell yourself, if you're selling yourself in an interview in a lackluster way, the prospect subconsciously starts to think, this is how you're going to behave in my company. So whether it's like you're saying, the idea of doing research, or when you're talking about a company, whatever you're doing to sell yourself, which should be the easiest thing for you to sell, the one you know the most, how much more, if you can't do that, then how are you going to sell my complex software? You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's interesting and fascinating.
That's right. And you didn't put the time in. It's like, is this the behavior you're going to exhibit when you're like on the team? And how can you be a top rep if you can't do the basics, right? Just simple.
Let's continue down this path, and continue to look at some more of the aspects. What else when it comes to the research, what should I be looking at or be looking for in the research?
Yeah. So obviously, number one, what does the company do? What is the technology? It doesn't matter. Technology, non-technology, it doesn't matter. But study the company, study the executives, read the story. What are the core values, right? Things that should be important to you when you're looking for an organization. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, the second thing I mentioned is, why are you a good fit for the organization? Well, that also ties into research. Research the job description, right? Read and review the job descriptions. What are they looking for? They usually explain, if you go to the job page, right, or the careers page, you're going to see all kinds of maybe videos. You're going to see the story, why others have joined the company. When you go to the job description, you're going to see what they're looking for, the requirement. Like, all of that information is going to be critical. It's critical data for you to be able to express your interest and have an edge, a strong conversation about why you're there. Because if you have that information and you're talking to the hiring manager, and the next person after you isn't crystal clear on what the company does and has no idea what the job is or why they think you're a good fit, then as a hiring manager, right, Donald, you're thinking, this person, they don't even know what they want. They don't even know what they're looking for. How do I know that they're going to be a good fit for this role? And so you're moving on very quickly.
All right. So understand that part is critical. Getting me locked down, getting me prepared for that. When your clients are coming to you and they're looking to land, a sales rep trying to look to land a position with one of your clients, or vice versa. But what are there anything else that you tell them when it comes to the research phase to be prepared for on day one? You gave us a whole lot already.
Yeah. No, I think well, there's a lot more. Then we talk about, then we talk about the looking at the company, what they do, the audience they sell to, right? The ICP, looking at the deal sizes in the industry, of course, looking at the job description, and all of that. Then we look at their, their story, their background, their story, so that they can articulate and connect the dots for the hiring manager as they're explaining and telling their story and why they think they're a good fit and where they add value.
Go back to the whole idea of preparation, and the concept you just shared about telling your story. I know we're going to get deeper into that, but what about the is it beneficial to look at being able to tell a company story, understand an industry? Or let's back up. I'm a sales rep and I'm trying to find a job. Should I focus on industry so I can do this better, so I can do the research better? So should I find companies in a certain industry, or do you encourage me to be agnostic and be open to find any type of sales related job? Because especially doing these research, I think my view is that it may be advantageous to niche down, but this is your baby. This is your world.
Let me add some clarity. So when I talk about doing research, the assumption is that you're interviewing at a company. When you're doing research, so you're interviewing at a company, so you know who they are, and you're getting the information you need to decide if you want to work there, if you can work there, if you're capable, things of that nature. I think the question you're asking is, if you're a job seeker or a sales professional looking and searching for a new job, what kind of research should you do when it comes to finding the right fit for you? And that's an interesting question, because that is dependent upon your skill set. If you are earlier in your career, if you're just getting started, if you have 0 to maybe 3 years of experience, depending on what field you're in, if you're in transactional sales as opposed to strategic selling, average deal size of $10,000 as opposed to $500,000, I would give you different advice. So for someone that's less experienced, is just getting started, and has a generic resume, they're still building their career. The real question is, where is their passion? The next question is, what industries do they believe they would be interested in? And part of that might be, what industries do they want to learn about from us? And how much information can we give to them around compensation, requirement, what the job details are, and things of that nature. If you're a more seasoned professional, then what I would recommend is, yes, you probably have a targeted industry. And in that case, you probably have a handful of competitors as well. What I would then do is I would focus on specific verticals or markets or competitors, but I would have a much more targeted approach to your search, or maybe not search, but for the information you're gathering. And I would start tracking companies. I'd start connecting with individuals on LinkedIn. I would make sure that you're building some process and connections around your search methodology to find that next step in your career. And then lastly, depending on where you are in your career, I would have a long runway, the longest runway you can, so that you can be selective, searching for the right opportunity that adds value to your career, both professionally as well as financially.
I love this. This kind of rolls right into the next point, though, is understand why you're a fit. So let's say there is a company you're going to meet with, or even if it's the research, like, in whatever stage they're at, but in the level of their career, but why you are a fit. Talk to me about that one. You kind of allude to it a little bit ago, but why is that component number 2 so critical?
Yeah. So there's a few things. When we talked about research earlier, now you found a company, they would like to interview with you, and you're trying to figure out why you're a good fit. So the few things that you need to understand. One is obviously who the company is and what they do. Number 2 is, what are their core values? Who's the company, right? Because your job is not just around selling. You're trying to find a good culture fit. You're trying to find the right environment. And if your core values don't align with the company's core values, it's very hard to sustain a career. Not only sustain a career, Donald, you know this, it's hard to, scale and grow your career. right?
Yeah.
So you want to find good core values, a good match. Then you want to understand by looking at a few things: the story, the job descriptions. You want to understand what do they look for. You want to look at other representatives that are in their company and what do their backgrounds look like on LinkedIn. Where did they come from? What did they do? Do you know any of them? Can you reach out and ask questions about their experience at the company presently, or maybe they worked there a few years ago? But it's around getting information. So it's not just about reading the website. It's all of these things. The website is critical, absolutely, right? That's where you're going to learn about the company, and the core values are critical. But there's so many different social pieces to this too. Research can be done through your connections. It can be done from understanding your competition. It can be done from, press releases. So it's gathering a three-dimensional or a 360 view of the company so you can understand it. And then you have much more information as to whether this is a good fit for you or not. And then when you get in the interview process, then you start asking questions and really start to do a deep dive and dial into the company, the culture, the role, who they're selling to. And then you really can figure out if it's a great fit for you or not.
I love it. Being present. Let's talk about that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in sales, if you're not present, right, you have to be present, engaged. If you're not present and you're just kind of going through the motions, and I'm sure you probably coach people on this all the time. If you're just going through the motions, it's hard to be a strong salesperson if you're not putting thought, process, understanding, listening, questioning, driving yourself, learning. If you're not present and you're just going through the motions, it is nearly impossible to be a top producer. And not only is it nearly possible to be a top producer, it's nearly impossible to sustain a career, because it's seen. You might not think anyone else can see it, but you can see that a person that's not engaging is struggling. When it comes to the interview process, you can see it almost immediately when if they miss an interview, they ghost you, their communication isn't great, their replies to email is sluggish, or none at all. Just small, basic things. You need to be present and engaging in your life and in your career to continue to see any kind of future advancement.
You talked about the present as far as showing up. Is that a thing that happens regularly?
Yep. You'd think it would never happen, but I don't know what's going on. It happens.
Is that because of age, certain age groups that they see this, or is it just across the board?
I'd say it's generational.
Okay, here we go. All right, let's go generational. What generation? I'm not showing up.
Well, there's a few generations. I look at, so I'm just going to use my kids as an example. I'm not talking about, all right.
Okay, keep going.
I'm not going to talk about career or what have you, but my son, he's 18. My oldest is 21 and my youngest is 16. Anyway, my 18-year-old and my 16-year-old, he just showed me a video the other day. Their generation, I think, it's like after eating and sleeping and living, 92% of their life will be on with some kind of digital apparatus in front of them. And I can see it. I talk to them all the time. 50% of the time, while they're living life right next to you, they're distracted by social media, digital. So they're on there. They have some kind of digital asset in front of them almost all the time. And so my son will walk out the door and he'll forget to shut the slider. It'll be open all day in the middle of the winter. I'll be like, why is it so cold in here? I get out, oh my God, the slider's wide open. My son, he's looking on his phone. He's probably Snapchatting someone as he's walking out the door to go to school. And then, the point is, I think what happens is there's so many distractions. And sometimes people are multitasking and with things that aren't necessarily vital to their life, their existence, and it distracts them, And because of those distractions, they're not present in what they're doing today, right now.
Uh-huh. So the reason I bring this up, one of my friends, he's not in the sales arena. He's in a medical arena, and he's hiring. He spent like thousands per month with like Indeed, trying to get these job placements. And he's in South Florida medical field. It's hard. It's hard. But he's getting these technical kids. Well, let's say kids, they're adults who are coming out of college, technical programs, and they're looking to land their gig. And some of them are older. But it's fascinating that he says, like, you'll get ghosted, like people who go through the interview process and day one ghost, like, just doesn't make sense. And he's like, what is going on? He's like, I've never seen this, but with a younger group, the generational idea here right now. And I sound like an old person now. We both talking about younger generation.
I know.
But like, it is something that's interesting, like why culture, generational, that maybe certain things are just not important. And I think the distraction idea could be one. And also, obviously, if they're probably applying to 3-4 different places, and I feel like the commitment levels are not as strong. Like, I see the difference with my sister-in-law. She is like Gen X, I believe. It's like 50s, but she was looking for her first gig. I'm not looking for a gig, looking for a new job. And she was just like so like locked in, like, I can't look at any other companies, or I need to focus on this one. When it's like the younger folks, they're like, listen, I'm planting my seed everywhere, and I'm not committed to you. One could come through. I don't know if there's something you're seeing, but that's what came to me when I thought about this present idea.
I think so. They communicate a little bit differently than we do. So if it's a younger generation, I don't, whatever. If it's a generation where you're, like I said, 0 to 3, probably 0 to 3, 0 to 4 years. They communicate differently. So when you talk to your friend, the executive, email you, they may check email, they may not. Text. So what we'll do is, depending on the generation, many times you send an email, you hear nothing, crickets. You send a text, you get an email, you get a message right away. So they, the way we run business is a little bit different than the way they do. And so if you're not adapting to the way they communicate, they may not intentionally blow you off, but you know what? There's so much interaction through other media that email is the last thing they look at. And so like, if you want to set up an interview, a lot of times we'll email and text, depending, but we'll email and text to make sure it's confirmed. We still get, some ghosting and lack of engagement, but you'll have to use the tools that the generation uses to communicate.
Yeah. Well, this is good. This is fascinating. Let's talk about the last one here. Last two. So know your story. I know you kind of started dabble into that. Why is knowing your story so important?
Yeah, I think mostly because people don't know their own story.
And what do you mean by that story? Like, know my story.
Yeah, let me like, so for example, you might have a person with a resume and they have, it's a simple resume. It's one-dimensional. They have their company name, their title, and some of their accomplishments. And then the next company, their title and their few accomplishments. So right down to the beginning of their career. But it's one-dimensional. It's hard to tell. So for us, we need to talk to every single person because we're trying to understand the story, right? You know sales. Mm-hmm. I know sales. I can't look at a resume and tell you someone's going to be awesome or not. As a matter of fact, we had a client recently say no to a candidate because their resume wasn't that great. We had to call the client and say, the resume stinks. The candidate is spectacular. Have the conversation. If it's not worth it, it's not worth it. We don't stick our neck out for everybody, but this candidate's actually very talented, and we think you're missing an opportunity here. And thank God that candidate's lucky to have us because the client said no, and we said you're gonna have to revise this resume. But anyway, when it comes to telling, go on. Sorry.
No, keep going. No, I'm listening.
So when it comes to telling a story, there's a lot of things that you take for granted. So when we say story, we want to know, who are you? Like, listen, did you start working at 15? Did you work for the local pizza place and ride your bike there every day? And were you the captain of the field hockey team? Not because you were the best athlete, but because you were the hardest worker and you worked extra time. And then you graduated in honors. You went to so-and-so college. You played sports there, or you didn't. You did a work study and you did it, and you worked. And you went to school. And by the way, you were a tour guide for the university. So you were selling future kids on the university. Great. And you graduated with a 3.8. Wonderful. And then you got your first job at so-and-so. Why? How'd you get that job? Why were you so good at it? What made you so great? And this is for early level, as you're early in your career, you need to be able to tell your story. And the reason why I was so successful in this role is because I worked harder than the other representatives. And I was one of the top, 3 sales reps on a monthly basis. And we would ask, well, why were you one of the top 3 sales reps? Right. So just basic things that they don't think about. Why was I the top rep? And you could be an enterprise salesperson. And we would say to you right now, okay, now it's 20 years later, 15 years later, you're an enterprise salesperson, you're the top rep. Why are you so good? What makes you so much better than the other people or the rest of the team? And then you have to think about, okay, what do I do differently than everyone else? Why am I so strong? And a lot of times, and no one's an expert at interviewing unless you're interviewing every year for a new job. So if you've been on the job for 5 or 6 or 4 years, you're not an expert interviewer. And so when you dust off the resume, I always say you need a second set of eyes. You need to be able to see yourself through a different lens. And when you tell me your story and I ask all these questions and I repeat it back to you and I review it with you so you can hear it out loud, many times our candidates say, wow, that actually sounds great.
Who is this person?
Yes. Who is this person? Right? And you help them remember. You're like, oh my God, you asked me all these questions and then all I did was pull it out of you. Here's the story. And they're like, wow, all right, I feel confident now. I'm ready to go. Let me interview.
Yeah. With this being said, going into that, knowing your story, getting that part set up, how does this tie in to wrap up now with closing the deal?
Well, you should be closing after every interview. And
what do you mean by that, though? Like, is it asking for the gig? You sound like you're going to
explain. I can give you some simple closing questions. Here we go. As the interview starts to wrap up, one of the questions, the first question would be, Donald, thank you so much for, meeting with me today. I really have a strong understanding of the company and the role, and I'm very interested. Now that you've had a chance to meet with me, do you have any questions or concerns with my ability to do this job? If the answer is I have no questions or concerns, great. Well, then now we're thinking logically, what's the next step in the process? Okay, if you have no questions or concerns, what is the next step of the process? Where do we go from here? The next step is a second interview with my counterpart, Joanne. Wonderful. Will you be setting up the meeting with Joanne? Will I be setting up the meeting with Joanne? How do I get in touch with Joanne? So you want to take leadership and hold them accountable so that you understand the next stages. No, I'll have, I will call you. I'll set up an interview with you and Joanne. Wonderful. When should I be hearing from you? Within the next 2 days. Great. If I don't hear from you by Wednesday, is it okay for me to email you or call you to make sure we can get this set up? Yes, it is. Wonderful. So on Wednesday, when they don't call you, you call and you say, I'm just calling to follow up as I said I would on the interview with Joanne. Do you happen to have a good time to speak with Joanne? Right? Just the basics, closing questions. Right? And then you meet with Joanne. You say, Joanne, same thing. Any questions or concerns? Actually, I do. What are your concerns? You live too far away. Oh, okay. I didn't realize I should have discussed this with you earlier. I should isolate each one of those concerns, address the concern, and basically address the concern and gain agreement that it's not a problem. I'm actually moving. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. I will be 5 minutes from the office. Is that still a concern? No, it's not. Great. Do you have any additional concerns? No, I don't. Okay. If you have no additional concerns, what is the next step in the process? Where do we go from here? You need to meet with John. Great. What does the process look like to meet with John? Same thing, right, Donald?
And it's to see the same thing that happens with sellers too, because when you're selling a product, and it just makes total sense, right? If you're a good seller, you should probably do this, because I think sometimes people feel like, well, if I'm doing that, the organization already knows what's next. I don't need to do this. This is not a sales position. I mean, this is not, I'm not selling their product yet. but you literally are selling a product and you're selling a service. That's you. So if how well you sell yourself to the company is going to be obviously line with the way that they're going to perceive you. And I think the other part to that too is when you look at it from this the perspective of as a sales professional, as an individual that is, you can't assume that the organization have their ducks in a row and know what to do. Like, and I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned as a seller over the years. Just never assume. You just can't. There's no way you can really do that to be successful.
You know what's crazy too? Let's say there's 3 people, 5 to 10 people interviewing for the job, and you're the only one that follows up on Wednesday, as you said you would, to schedule that appointment with whatever, Joanne. Right now you have 5 other reps that aren't doing anything. Right? So they fall through the cracks. They don't stand out. You're the one that gets the second interview, then you close and you get the third interview. You're present, you're following up, it's the basic fundamentals of sales.
I love it. I wish we could go on for another hour or so because this is so good. But Dan, there's so many great insights in this. There are probably leaders, sales leaders listening to this episode, individual reps who are listening to this and they're looking for the next gig or looking for bringing new talent into their organization. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, our website is treelineinc.com. If you want, you can fill out a contact us form and we'll help you find a new opportunity or hire. But if you want to just reach out to me directly, connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah. Dan Fantasia, that's my my page. So my profile, it's just at, Dan Fantasia. Look me up, connect with me, call our company, fill out a contact us form online, whatever you want. If you ask for me, I will definitely be in touch with you.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the episode today, sharing your wisdom with us, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Hey, that was Dan Fantasia. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dan. Truly appreciate it and truly appreciate you all being here as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you liked it, go ahead and connect with Dan on LinkedIn. Tell him that you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist Podcast. As always, we want to provide you amazing value and help you to be able to thrive and succeed. If you haven't done so already, check out our sponsors. They have some really, really good offers that you can take advantage of. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn myself, and we use it extensively. And I would encourage you to check them out and see what you can use, how you can use this to be able to help you in your sales efforts. As always, I want you to thrive and succeed. I want you to improve. We have our sales mastermind. These designed to help sales professionals like you and me to be able to learn what's best, how to improve, how to overcome some of the biggest challenges we're facing as sales professionals, and just overall thrive. If you'd like to check out our masterminds, find more details in the show notes or go to thesalesevangelist.com/mastermind. As always, let's 3 to 5x sales pipeline, close twice as many deals, raise your level of thinking, and go out and do big things. See you on the next one.